Hey, how's it going? This is Joe and Tell. Today I'm going to be talking about the SoundCast VG5 and VG7 Bluetooth speakers. So first off, these were sent to me by Audio Advice, one of my channel sponsors, and they actually are offering a discount code right now for $100 off each of these. So right now the VG5 is $349 and the VG7 is $399. I'll leave a link down below if you want to pick one of these up. So I have two other videos, one which is a binaural sound demo of these two speakers, and another one which is a measurement of both of these in REW. So if you're interested in either of those, I'll leave a link down below. So one thing that makes these different than typical Bluetooth speakers is if you look at them, they're a little bit bigger and they have larger woofers, giving them more bass than most typical Bluetooth speakers. So you will get more bass with these, but the question is the extra size, the extra price, is it worth it? Now let's take a closer look at both of these. Here's what they both have in common. Both of them have removable batteries, and that's kind of handy in case, batteries do go out. So if they do, you can actually just replace it with another one. That's kind of cool. Like I said earlier, these both do have larger woofers than average, and so that gives you more bass. In the case of the VG5, it has a 6-inch woofer, and in the case of the VG7, it actually has a 7-inch woofer. Crazy. Of course, they have Bluetooth, they have AAC, aptX, and aptX low latency. They also have 8 memory slots, so that means that you can pair 8 devices without having to unpair one of the other ones, so that comes in handy. They also have an analog input, which I find handy if you have an extra phone or iPod hanging around, and you can just plug that in and have a very reliable connection. So you can wirelessly pair two of these in stereo. I wasn't sure if they would only work with a VG5 with another VG5, but actually they worked with one another, the VG5 and the VG7, so I was able to pair those up. Kind of a handy feature. One of the benefits, of course, is you get stereo, and the other one is that when you have two, you can actually play them louder. They both also have NFC pairing, which I find very useful, and it allows you to just tap your phone to the speaker and it'll automatically pair. You don't have to go through Bluetooth, and it actually makes switching between the two devices pretty easy. They're both weather resistant, IP64, which means that they're protected from dust and also water splashes. Don't go dunking it into water or spraying it with a hose. It's splash protection, meaning, rain, things like that. Both of these actually have USB phone chargers as well as a child lockout feature in case you have kids that like to press buttons. The other thing is, for their size, they're both relatively lightweight. Now let's start taking a look at the differences, starting with the VG5. So first off, this one has two 18650 batteries from what I saw, and the battery life is 10 hours with a 5-hour recharge time. This does use a different charger, and it's styled differently from the VG7, as you can tell. It is 12.5 pounds, and this one has speakers on two sides as opposed to 4 on the other one. It has two 3-inch aluminum speakers and a 6-inch downward firing woofer. So the power out of this is 44 watts coming out of the Class D amp, so that's sufficient. Now, my measured bass extension on this was 57 Hertz, and they claim 70 Hertz, so it actually performed better in my test than what they claim, and I always like that. When it overperforms, that's a good thing for me. Now, as far as the volume for me, it got loud enough for most situations. It depends on what your expectations are. If you plan on being able to go 30 feet, 40 feet away and still hear it loud, it's not really that type of speaker. It's more of a speaker that you have at a campfire, you're sitting and you have it near you. It's gonna be more than loud enough in those situations. I would say loud enough to the point where if you turned it up all the way, you wouldn't be able to have a normal conversation. So pretty loud. Now, as far as the signal on this, it was getting a mono signal. They have two speakers, so they could have made it a stereo pair, and they just chose to make it mono. So that's not something I really love about it. Now, they also say that it has indoor and outdoor EQ like the VG7 does, but I looked through the manual and I couldn't find it anywhere, so I'm not sure how to do it. So anyway, whether it does or doesn't, I don't know. I wasn't able to find it. So as far as tonality on this, I think it sounds very good if you're on axis with the actual speaker itself. With a Bluetooth speaker this size, it's kind of tricky because is it meant to be on the floor? Is it meant to be propped up? And I would say it sounds best when it's at ear level like a typical speaker. So if you're able to prop this up a few feet up, if you're sitting down and, getting a direct sound from the speaker, it sounds very nice. It's a pleasing tonality. Now, if it's on the floor, you're off axis, meaning that you're not getting a lot of that treble. So another thing I noticed is because the speakers are on the side, if you're facing the front, your 90 degrees off axis to both of those speakers, so you're actually getting the least amount of treble in the front or at the back of it. So what you want to do is turn it to the side, get on axis to that speaker, and it'll sound much clearer. Let's move on to the bigger brother, the VG7. Now this looks like it has 4 18650 batteries, and they claim a battery life of 21 hours and a 3-hour recharge time. Now this also has a different charger, which is probably why it has a faster recharge time. So this one's definitely larger, as you can tell. It's styled very differently than the other one. It actually has a handle that sticks out, which is handy because this is 21 pounds. The other thing that I thought was cool is that it does have removable grills, so you can actually see the speakers, and if you need to wipe it down, that's kind of handy. So this one actually has 4 3-inch aluminum speakers and a 7-inch downward firing woofer, which is pretty crazy. In my testing, this does have discrete left and right stereo, which is kind of cool. It's not like you're gonna get a super soundstage, but it's kind of good to have at least somewhat of that effect. Now this one bumps up the power to 60 watts, and the measured bass extension in my measurements was 64 hertz, and they claim 55. So this one's the opposite. They claimed a lower frequency response, and I was only able to measure up to 64. So I'm not sure if it was an issue with mine specifically, but that's what the measurements showed. So as far as volume and SPL, this definitely gets louder than the VG5, and I think it's because it has more power, has a bigger woofer, bigger enclosure, and as well as having 4 speakers. So as far as sound quality, and my measurements confirm what I heard, this does have a brighter response. So I think that this was more optimized for being on the floor, and you don't want to put this on a stand and have it ear level because it might sound a little bit too bright in that aspect. But if you're sitting down or standing, this actually sounds very good, nice and clear, as opposed to the VG5, where if you have it on the floor and you're standing, it sounds a little bit muffled. Here are the aspects that I like of each. Now the VG5, I like the styling a little bit better. I think it looks a little more sleek. You know, the handle is kind of just on the back, it's not sticking out. And I like it. I kind of like that. I also like the weight in 12.5 pounds versus 21 pounds. I'm not a guy that goes out camping, or I'm not an outdoor guy or anything like that. But the less I have to carry and the slimmer the profile, the better. So 12.5 pounds versus 21 pounds, yeah, give me the 12.5 pounds. The big thing for me, which was a surprise, was the deep bass extension that I found in my measurements. Now, in my initial listening, I thought that the VG7 had deeper bass, but I think it was just louder. And that's one thing you have to be careful of when you're comparing, is you have to make sure that they're both at the same volume. But later on I was testing it, I'm like, you know what, I think that the VG5 does have deeper bass extension, kind of crazy. So I'm not sure exactly why that is. So as far as tonality, I do like it, again, if you can get it at ear level. If you're planning on just leaving it on the floor, you might want to just spend extra and get the VG7 instead. Also, I like the lower price. $50 is $50, so yeah, save some money. Now, as far as why you might want to choose the VG7, it does have a larger battery, and it's 21 hours versus 10 hours. Also, even though it has a bigger battery, you get a faster recharge time of 3 hours versus 5 hours. So yeah, that's kind of cool. The removable grills are pretty cool. And one thing is the tactile buttons. The other one has a different kind of interface where it's a flat layout. Sometimes I wasn't sure if it actually registered my response, so I do prefer the tactile buttons on the VG7. Because this has speakers on all 4 sides, it does give you better 360 coverage. So if you're not sure exactly where people are gonna be, if they're gonna be moving around it, doesn't matter, because they're all gonna pretty much get the same or very similar sound. So as far as the tonality, I found that these were kind of optimized for being on the floor, and they are too bright when you have them up high, but just right if you're sitting distance or if you're standing, you know, a few feet away from them. I think they're really optimized for that position. These can also play louder than the VG5, and again, they have a stereo signal, which is kind of cool. These also do have the indoor-outdoor EQ, and I was able to find it because there's just a button right there. Very easy. So as far as a wish list of things I wish they had an adjustable EQ or some kind of app where I could, you know, make my own adjustments, maybe turn the bass down, turn the treble up, things like that. Also, I wish that they could get a little bit louder. And one way to do that would be if they had a dynamic EQ, meaning they both have a crazy amount of bass, but I believe that it's probably the bass that doesn't allow them to get louder because they don't want it to distort. And neither of these had any audible distortion. So I wish they were able to do something where maybe they didn't give it as much deep bass extension. If you turn it up louder, that would allow you to get it up louder. So I don't know. maybe something like that. So initially I had written that I wish they had a lower price, but Audio Advice does have a discount code bringing them $100 less than MSRP. So there you go. Now, I also wish that the VG7 had a lower bass extension, although the VG7 SE is actually the same thing except it has some lights and it's taller, and they claim 40 Hertz. So that's pretty nuts. Now, if you forced me to pick one, I would probably have to go with a VG5. I mean, they both have their use case. Yeah, I would be happy to take either of these out to a park, to a party, something like that. But I would have to say, in my case, I'd probably pick the VG5 just because I like the styling, I like the size and weight, $50 less, and the deeper bass extension. I mean, even though the tonality isn't as good when it's on the floor, I feel like I could just prop it up and kind of like face it where I need to face it. But, you know, it's really a toss-up. I think if you went with a VG7, it wouldn't be a bad deal either. So again, if you want to listen to my binaural demos or check out the measurements for these two speakers, I'll leave a link down below. So anyway, that's it. If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. That's it. Take care. Bye-bye.